30 days, pay $88,000, or lose the land I'd just staked my future on. That was the first thing I saw on a Tuesday morning, in big red letters, on official paper I didn't recognize, from an HOA I'd never joined, for a ranch I'd bought at a county auction fair and square, and as my coffee went cold in my hand, I realized this wasn't a billing mistake, it was the opening shot of a war. I'm Jack Mercer, 52. I've spent most of my life swinging a hammer, arguing with inspectors, and fixing other people's dumb decisions, and after my divorce finally wrapped up last year, I decided if I was going to start over, I'd do it on solid ground, real dirt, real fence posts, something nobody could just take away with a memo and a smirk. That's how I ended up at a county auction staring at Boone Ridge Ranch. 40 acres of Texas pasture, a tired 1970s farmhouse, and 2 barns with more rust than paint, but still good bones. The previous owner, Harold Boone, died without a will. His far-off relatives couldn't keep up with the property taxes, and the place had been sitting empty for years. The morning I walked it for the first time, gravel crunched under my boots. The smell of old diesel still hung in the barn from Harold's tractors. Mist slid low over the fields like something out of a postcard, and when the wind pushed those half-rotten barn doors just enough to groan, I felt it in my chest. This is home. When the auctioneer's gavel came down at $180,000, about half what it was worth, I actually believed I'd beaten the system for once. My daughter Lily comes out every other weekend. The first time she stepped out of my truck, she spun in a slow circle, looked at the back pasture, and said, "Dad, we could have horses out here." And for the first time since the divorce, I saw her imagining a future that didn't hurt. For 3 days, it felt like peace, sawdust on my hands, boards under my feet, a broken life getting patched back together. Day 4, a white BMW SUV rolled up my gravel drive like it was lost and offended about it. Out stepped Caroline Whitfield, perfect blonde hair, clothes tailored within an inch of their life, clipboard in hand, perfume so strong it arrived 10 seconds before she did. "Mr. Mercer? I'm Caroline Whitfield, president of the Silver Mesa Preserve Association," she said with a real estate smile that never reaches the eyes. "We need to talk about your responsibilities as our newest member." I set my hammer down, wiped my hands. "I'm sorry, what association?" There was nothing about an HOA in my purchase documents. That smile sharpened, just a bit. There was an automatic inclusion when we expanded our boundaries in 2018. "Your property falls within Silver Mesa Preserve now." She handed me a folder that could stop a bullet. "There's a $2,500 initiation fee, plus $390 monthly dues, retroactive to the expansion date." Behind all the legal words, what I heard was simple. "Pay us protection money for a club you never signed up for." "Ma'am, with respect, Harold Boone never agreed to any of this," I said. "Mr. Boone's signature wasn't required," Caroline replied, using that tone people reserve for waiters and contractors. "Property boundaries speak louder than individual consent." Right then, Lily cracked the front door, looked at the BMW, and said, just loud enough, "Dad, who's the lady with the car that costs more than our house?" For half a second, I saw something ugly flash in Caroline's eyes, like she'd stepped in something on my driveway. She left me with a stack of rules, threats disguised as policy, and a headache. So I did what you do out here. I went to my neighbors. A mile down the road lived Ethan Park and Rosa Delgado, both running working ranches just like mine. Over coffee at Ethan's beat-up kitchen table, they told me their version. Silver Mesa Preserve up on the hill, all $2 million stucco mansions and manicured lawns, wanted the old ranch parcels gone. Their association had sunk way over budget on a fancy Silver Mesa pavilion. Homeowners revolted against a special assessment, and suddenly 12 ranch properties were magically inside the HOA boundaries and behind on dues. 2 weeks later, a certified mail truck rattled up my drive. Inside the envelope, a formal lien, talk of HOA super lien authority, and a very clear threat: 30 days to pay $88,000 in alleged back dues or face foreclosure on Boone Ridge Ranch. I stood there in my kitchen, holding that letter, smelling ink and arrogance, and realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a land grab dressed up in legalese. I took my temper and my paperwork to the county courthouse and spent 3 days buried in files that smelled like dust and old tobacco. What I found made my blood run hot. The original ranch parcels, including Boone Ridge, predated Silver Mesa Preserve by decades. Our land was there in 1987. The subdivision plat? Barely 5 years old. Somewhere in the back of my head, I heard an old construction attorney I'd worked with once. You can't just slap new rules on land that's been used the same way for decades and pretend it's always been that way. I started copying every survey, every recorded boundary, every deed, but I knew I needed help. So I hired Julia Carter, a property attorney whose hourly rate made me swallow hard, but whose brain I'd seen tear crooked developers apart. She spread my documents across her conference table, leaned back in her leather chair, and said, "Jack, they didn't just overreach. They bulldozed straight past the law. If what you're telling me is right, Silver Mesa Preserve has no business putting liens on your place." While Julia dug into the legal angles, notice requirements, old use rights, I started treating every interaction like evidence. I kept voicemails, took photos of letters, saved every email. My gut told me this was going to get uglier before it got better. Then Ethan slid a copy of Silver Mesa Preserve board meeting minutes across my table, pulled from a public records request. In those neat little lines, it was all laid out. The pavilion project had blown past budget. Homeowners had revolted against a special assessment, and someone suggested incorporating adjacent ranch properties to broaden the dues base. It wasn't about community standards. It was about plugging a financial hole with our land. To make it worse, Caroline's husband, Graham Whitfield, sat on the county planning commission that approved the boundary expansion. They'd given their land grab a fake halo of legitimacy. Then the harassment started to circle me like buzzards. Collection calls from Pinnacle Recovery Group, threatening wage garnishment over a debt I'd formally disputed. 2 contracting jobs mysteriously evaporated after clients heard things about me not honoring legal obligations. Next-door posts from anonymous profiles talking about deadbeat outsiders lowering property values. It didn't take a genius to connect the dots back to Caroline. Instead of screaming online, I filed a formal request for 3 years of Silver Mesa financials. HOA or not, they still had to follow transparency laws. A week later, my kitchen table was buried under statements and spreadsheets, and as I went line by line with a highlighter, the rot showed itself. There was $42,000 in consulting fees to Whitfield Community Solutions, one of Caroline's own companies. $30,000 to Greenline Grounds, a landscaping outfit owned by her brother-in-law, billing triple the going rate. $15,000 to Strategic Horizons LLC, a communications firm whose only presence online was a Gmail and a faint link to Caroline's college roommate. While she threatened to take my ranch for unpaid dues, she was siphoning money from her own neighbors. At the same time, she staged a spectacle at an HOA meeting in the Silver Mesa Pavilion. Slides of my ranch labeled illegal commercial activity, speeches about non-compliant properties endangering community values, and a follow-up next-door post with a photo of my place and a caption about deadbeat ranchers refusing to contribute. But modern small towns don't just talk at potlucks anymore. They talk on TikTok. Lily, without telling me at first, started posting short videos about HOA Karens trying to steal our ranch, mixing clips of sunsets over Boone Ridge with screenshots of letters and liens. Somehow, those blew up, tens of thousands of views, comments from people in other states saying, they tried that here too. Instead of isolating us, Caroline's smear campaign made us a rallying point. Meanwhile, the harassment got physical. I found boot prints circling my barn, cigarette butts that weren't mine by the back fence, tire tracks cutting into the mud where someone had parked and walked in. I photographed everything and installed trail cameras. Anonymous complaints went to the power company about heavy industrial equipment, to the county about unpermitted structures. Inspectors showed up, looked around at my 40-year-old tractor and sagging barns, and walked away shaking their heads at the wasted time. One county inspector let something slip that made my day. Whoever had ratted me out had also reported the Silver Mesa Pavilion as an unpermitted event venue. He planned to take a closer look at that. Caroline had pulled the pin and thrown the grenade at herself. Then, in a misfiled folder at the courthouse, I found the dynamite, the original 1987 covenant between the first subdivision developer and existing ranch owners. Right there, in plain language. Existing agricultural parcels shall retain perpetual exemption from association governance. That protection applied to Boone Ridge Ranch and 11 other ranch properties. I took copy straight to Julia. She read it twice, tapped it with her pen, and said, "This isn't a technicality, Jack. This is a steel door. They never had authority over you. And as a licensed agent, Caroline Whitfield had a duty to know this before filing liens. That's not just civil trouble. That's professional and maybe criminal trouble." We mapped out the implications: 12 ranch families, invalid liens, illegal dues, months of harassment. An HOA that had built its survival plan on fraud. A board president whose license and freedom were now on the line. "Do we use this now?" I asked. "Not yet," Julia said. "Let her commit fully. Let her stand so deep in her own story that the only way out is straight through us." So we built a case and a stage at the same time. My kitchen became command central. Ethan used his logistics background to turn years of HOA documents into a timeline and spreadsheets that would make an auditor grin. Rosa Delgado, retired teacher, organized the other families and started educating subdivision homeowners about fiduciary duty and their right to see where their money was going. Megan Ortiz from Channel 12 picked up our story, worked her own investigation, and scheduled a full segment on HOA abuse with Silver Mesa Preserve as Exhibit A. Caroline, feeling the walls close in but not understanding why, started flailing. Sugar in my tractor's fuel tank. Attempts to reclassify my utilities at higher commercial rates. A chain-link fence thrown across my only access road. Bright yellow, no trespassing. Silver Mesa Preserve signs zip-tied to it like she owned my driveway. Deputy Cole Ramirez, who'd known me for years, came out, looked at the fence and said, "She's got about as much right to block this as I have to padlock her bedroom door." The contractor who'd put it up took it down that afternoon, still confused about what he'd been hired to do. Caroline even filed a false police report claiming I'd threatened her at a grocery store. Deputy Ramirez pulled the security footage. She was in a different aisle. We never crossed paths. It went straight into the harassment file. Then she tried to buy me off. She invited me to lunch at the diner, neutral ground, and I showed up with my phone recording, legal in a one-party state. Over wilted salad and burnt coffee, she offered me $25,000 to relocate somewhere more aligned with your lifestyle, talking about avoiding unpleasantness and expensive legal battles. It was all there, in her own words, an admission that this was about making me disappear, not enforcing legitimate rules. By the time Thursday night's HOA delinquent accounts meeting rolled around at the Silver Mesa Pavilion, everything was in motion. Julia had drafted civil claims and complaints. The Attorney General's office had opened a file. Megan Ortiz's full investigation was set to air an hour before the meeting. The ranch families were ready. The pavilion was jammed. Homeowners standing in the back, reporters in the front row, Lily and a pack of teenagers in Protect Rural Land, shirts with their phones out. Caroline sat at the head table, hair perfect, smile cracked. She started with a speech about financial threats to our community, and I stood. "If you're going to accuse me and my neighbors," I said, "I'd like a chance to respond." "You're not a member of this association," she snapped. "You have no standing here." "Actually," Julia said, rising, "my client has every right to defend his title and present evidence of this board's conduct." I hooked my laptop to their projector. First slide, the 1987 covenant, enlarged, with the line about perpetual exemption from association governance highlighted. "This," I told the room, "is the agreement your developer signed with ranch owners before any of this was built. It says our ranches can't be placed under HOA control. That includes Boone Ridge Ranch and 11 other properties. This has been in county files for 35 years. And as a licensed agent, Ms. Whitfield was required to know it before filing liens against us." I clicked to the next slide. Payments to Whitfield Community Solutions, Greenline Grounds, Strategic Horizons, LLC. While she threatened to foreclose on my home for $88,000 in made-up dues, I continued. "Your board president was paying her own company, her brother-in-law, and a shell firm run by her friend, all with your money, no competitive bids." The room exploded, shouting, disbelief. Someone demanded to see the books. Someone else yelled, "Is this where our pavilion money went?" Caroline tried to claim the documents were fake, claimed I'd harassed the board. So I played the diner recording. Her voice, through the sound system, offering me $25,000 to move away. My voice asking if she was offering money to leave land she claimed I owed her for. Her answer about avoiding a legal battle. Then Deputy Ramirez stepped to the front, calm but firm, and told the room that Caroline Whitfield was under active investigation for harassment, false reports, trespassing. Julia handed over notice of our class action suit, 12 ranch families, 7-figure damages, and our complaints to the State Real Estate Board and Attorney General. Homeowners turned on Caroline in real time. Calls for her resignation, demands for audits, board members scrambling to distance themselves. She shouted about sacrifice and misunderstanding, but nobody was listening. The story had finally flipped in public. That night, close to midnight, her resignation hit my inbox, lawyer-crafted, pathetic. Within 48 hours, Silver Mesa Preserve settled. $180,000 split between ranch families, full restitution of every illegal fee, written recognition that our ranches are permanently exempt. The state suspended her license. The DA moved forward with charges. The HOA elected a brand new board. Rosa Delgado as president, Ethan Park as treasurer, people who took the word neighbor seriously. Their first acts: put our exemption into the bylaws, open the books, bring in an independent auditor. Their second: turn the unfinished pavilion project into something actually worth having. The Harold Boone Heritage Garden and Preserve, 40 acres of native plants, walking trails, and community garden plots open to everyone, HOA or not, funded partly by the money we just won from the people who tried to take our land. My business didn't just recover, it took off. Clients wanted the guy who stood up to a corrupt HOA, building their shops and houses. Lily started talking about studying environmental law. The Ranch Coalition turned into a regional property rights group, helping families in 3 counties fight off similar HOA overreach. Megan Ortiz's series won awards and sparked investigations in other states. Lawmakers started talking about real HOA oversight. These days, I wake up on Boone Ridge Ranch knowing no one can tape a fake notice to my door and threaten to take it. I sit on the porch with Lily when she's home from college, watching the sun burn down over fields that are finally, officially, ours. And I've learned the best revenge isn't watching someone like Caroline Whitfield crash and burn. It's standing in the middle of a stronger community she accidentally helped build. So here's my question for you. If an HOA, a board, or any little pocket of power decided your home was their next project, would you keep your head down to keep the peace? Or would you take the hit, risk the stress and the late nights, to fight back? And where do you think the line really is between reasonable rules and pure, weaponized abuse of power?